Hi everybody, this is Sarah at Health by Sarah. Today I'm going to talk to you about things that I learned from my first birth until my last birth. And the first thing that I learned was chiropractic care is really important, especially for getting the baby into the optimal position for labor. I can certainly attest to that from my last pregnancy because I had no chiropractic care my first pregnancy. And I had a very hard labor with my first daughter. She actually came what they call sunny side up, and so that means that she was not in the optimal position. If she would have been face down, that would have been the most optimal position coming out. And so this time around, like around 31 weeks, they found that the baby was in the optimal position, but then like a couple weeks later, she was not. She was in, I think, what's called a posterior position, and she kind of stayed that way for several weeks, but around that time is when I started to get chiropractic care, and I actually was only going about every 2 weeks, and my last appointment was just 1 week before I delivered her. And she stayed in that optimal position from the last week until giving birth, which was amazing because it certainly made a difference in the level of pain that I was feeling during labor. Back labor is truly the worst. As they say, it makes for a really hard labor. And secondly, I would say to find a doctor, midwife, or care provider that aligns with your goals or your values and stick with them. The first doctor that I had with my daughter, I stuck with him, and I actually really liked his attitude about things because he would respect my goals or my values about how I wanted my pregnancy and labor to go. There were certain things that were requirements for him, but I would say overall he was willing to listen to what my suggestions or goals were and respect them. However, it was a hospital birth, so there's only like so much you can really get around with in a hospital setting or in a doctor as your care provider. But this time around I went with a birth center, midwives, and a lot of my goals, values were the same as theirs. They didn't have the standard interventions that a typical OBGYN does, which is really nice. So I felt a lot more comfortable, and I felt like I wasn't fighting an uphill battle, so to speak, the whole time. So that was a lot less stressful. If you're more comfortable with a doctor, though, like, go with what you're comfortable with, of course. Like, don't go by somebody else's suggestions just because they sound better. Definitely be comfortable with your decision. Third thing I learned is hiring a doula is really valuable. I didn't the first time around, again, because of the cost. But this time around, I was just really determined to have a natural birth, knowing what happened the first time. And towards the end, my midwives were really encouraging me to hire a doula because they said that they can't be with me 100% of the time. The funny thing is that they didn't even end up being with me the entire time because I was at home most of the time. But that being said, a doula is still very valuable. She was helping me over the phone, and she's also giving me postpartum care as well. So they're valuable in many different ways, and I'm going to have a whole nother video just about the value of hiring a doula. The fourth thing I learned is taking a natural birth class is really important and valuable. My husband and I took an online natural birth class the first time around, but we felt like we weren't quite confident because we didn't take it in person. And I think that is really the key, is taking it in person is really invaluable because you can ask questions right as you're thinking them to your instructor. You can interact with other people and hear what their experiences were. There's a lot of other reasons for that, but I think for us, that just fit a lot better. We took a natural birth class, which was really a refresher for second-time parents. At the first birth center we were with, and that one closed, unfortunately. But the value of us going to another birth center was that we could take advantage of their classes, which was part of the fee that we had to pay the birth center. So we actually took one other refresher course and a water birth class, and both of them were really valuable. We were able to interact with the instructor and the other couples there, and we just felt a lot more comfortable, confident, and more prepared for having a natural birth this time around. The fifth thing I learned was breathing. I did not breathe the right way through my entire first birth. It was more like a panic kind of breathing. At least when I was going through contractions, I was just screaming at the top of my lungs. And one thing I learned from the natural birth class is when you're screaming at the top of your lungs and you're in pain, it actually intensifies the pain. And so I was unknowingly causing myself to have more pain in my first labor by breathing that way. And I learned the proper way, which is more like making animal sounds or low moaning, like oh. And when you breathe like that through your contractions, it actually makes the pain much more manageable, and you're doing it from like the low part of your abdomen or diaphragm, and it just makes things much more bearable. I can certainly attest to that from the second time around. The sixth thing I learned is that water birth or hydrotherapy is really valuable, and I certainly experienced that in my first birth because the birth room that I had a shower and a tub, and I was able to take advantage of both. But the mistake that I made was maybe going into it too soon, or just continuing to get in and out of the shower or the tub, and that was really exhausting for me. And every time I would get out, I would feel this intense pain in my lower back. It was like the worst thing, or the weight of the world on my back. So again, my mistake was coming out of the tub. And the second time around, although I didn't have a water birth, I did take a bath or stay in the bath for I don't know the exact amount of time. I wasn't timing it, but I was in there, and it did help with the intensity of the contractions. The seventh thing I learned was about megadoses of vitamin C. I've already created another video about the benefits of that during pregnancy and labor, and I'm coming out with another one about my personal experience with it in pregnancy and labor. But the megadoses of vitamin C, there's a lot of evidence of the benefits during pregnancy and labor. It's certainly made for a much easier, faster labor for me, and there's evidence to back that up. Number 8, I didn't stay at home long enough. I went to the hospital too soon. So my piece of advice is to stay at home as long as you can, but not too long unless you're planning on a home birth. We were not planning on a home birth. That's okay, because everything went fine. But yeah, we certainly were planning on giving birth at the birth center. But the problem was that my midwives and my doula thought that I was in early labor, but pretty much the whole time I was talking to them or communicating with them throughout my labor. And perhaps I truly was in early labor, and just the active transition and pushing phase was just such a short phase that they weren't able to tell me in time to come in. So try to find that happy medium. Communicate with your midwives or care provider where you are in labor, but it's mainly advised by midwives, especially, to go in when you're in active labor, not when you're in early labor. When you go to the hospital too early, especially during early labor, your chances of a C-section increase significantly. So that's something I'm always trying to avoid unless it's actually a true emergency. Number 9, try different laboring positions. That is something that you will have learned from your birthing class if you take one, and that is a benefit that you can receive from hiring a doula as well, because they're typically trained in knowing different labor positions that will help the mom progress further and help with her pain management as well. So that's definitely valuable knowledge to have, but especially having a doula, because you or your husband might forget what you learned in your birth class, especially if you're not completely relaxed and in your normal state of mind. The last thing I learned that I think is really important are birth affirmations. I have a whole separate video on that of Bible verses and inspirational quotes that will help you during labor. It's really up to you, actually, which ones are the most helpful to you, but those are the ones that I thought were the most inspirational to me. And I can say that it did help me during labor. When I was by myself laboring in the tub, I was thinking about some of my birth affirmations that I had created, and one of them I was trying to meditate upon was, I can do this, even though I didn't believe it. And then I had my doula text me and said, you can do this, you can do anything for 60 seconds. And I was thinking, well, I don't know about that. But then she sent another text and she quoted Philippians 4:13, which says, I can do anything through Christ who strengthens me. And that was something I truly needed to hear at that point, and it definitely helped me to carry on more. So those are the most important things that I learned from my first pregnancy until now that really taught me how to have a more have a higher chance of having a natural labor, and I was able to achieve that this time. So that was really empowering to me, and I thought I would share that with you. I would love to hear what your experiences are in the comments, so let me know. And if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, hit that notification bell, and subscribe to my channel as well. Until next time, bye.